Praise be Jesus Christ, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you for joining me on this third video in the series on Christian marriage. This is all coming from an encyclical by Pope Pius XI, which was written about 100 years ago in 1930, and the encyclical in Latin is called Casti, Connubii. This third video is going to be on one of the fundamental elements of marriage, which is called conjugal fidelity, mutual assistance, or you could say mutual support. So we'll go through what that means. As in the other two videos, this video we'll walk through sections from the encyclical. So just go through different sections, commentary on those sections with a little bit of explanation, and then primarily focusing on how the Holy Father lays out the encyclical, which first he's going to define clearly what he's talking about. In this case, what is mutual assistance? What is that? He's going to define that. Then he's going to go directly into the attacks. Remember, our enemy is the devil, the flesh, and the world. Primarily here, we're talking about the falsehoods of the world that are attacking marriage and family. And so we're going to go through that, the attacks, primary attacks that he's going to center on and focus. And then finally, the Pope doesn't leave us hanging. The Church doesn't leave us hanging. He's going to give us some remedies on how we can make marriages stronger, of course, and support this great sacrament, this institution of God. Section 23. This conjugal faith blooms more freely, more beautifully, and more nobly when it is rooted in that more excellent soil, the love of husband and wife, which pervades all the duties of married life and holds pride and place in Christian marriage. For matrimonial faith demands that husband and wife be joined in an especially holy and pure love, not as adulterers love each other, but as Christ loved the church. There's a lot here, but I want to focus first on where he says the duties of married life. And the love is going to pervade, it's going to go into those duties. But first, let's talk about what are the duties of a man and a woman once they commit to each other. You can see here, I really like in the diagram that we're talking about mutual assistance, also called conjugal fidelity. That word jugal means yoke. It's like the yoke of an animal in which a farmer would put a yoke on two animals. So I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about this yoke or this conjugal fidelity. A man and a woman are saying that they're faithful to being yoked together. But let's talk about that. So a farmer is going to yoke two animals together. What is that farmer going to do if he's a good farmer? He's going to find two animals that he feels work well together. So he knows the temperament of his animals. Let's say he's working with ox or horses or whatever. And so he's going to pick two animals that he knows fit together and work together. And then he will handpick animal 1 and animal 2. And then he's going to put a yoke upon them. He's going to put the instrument upon them that will fit them correctly. It's not going to hurt one of the animals or benefit one and hurt the other. The farmer, wanting to care for both animals and wanting the animals to be productive and work, he's going to fit them correctly. Think now how God does that with a man and a woman. So whether you are married or preparing for marriage, just know that out of 8 billion people in the face of the earth right now, I am one man out of 4 billion approximately. So this means that God, the divine farmer, has picked me out of 4 billion, and he has picked my wife Angela out of 4 billion women, and he has taken these two animals, Matt and Angela, right? He has understood our temperaments more than we understand our own, and he has put us together. And then not only does he put us together in proximity, but he yokes us. He is the one that puts us in the bond. And of course, this is why that first video, coming to the church and having God bond two people, is so important. So now when Matt and Angela, these two animals by the farmer, are put together and yoked correctly together, then we are now faithful to that yoke. Once the farmer does this, once the farmer puts two people in this yoke, he does now expect them to work. And so there are duties involved. So you have the two people handpicked by God. You have them yoked together, fit together by God, and then God is going to expect them to do certain things, just like a farmer would expect these now yoked animals to plow the field or do whatever work is going to be done that day. So what are the duties of marriage? And I think, we can center here on just below that yoke in the diagram. You see there are three primary things here that we see: home, taking care of a home, having a home together. Intimacy, this would include a lot of different things, but particularly the sexual act. And then providing and protecting for now the family, the couple, but then again their children, which would then be providing and protecting for the family. And this is a matter of justice. I really like, out of all the things of marriage, I really like this fact of justice. That about 25 years ago, because I've almost been married 25 years, when I looked my wife in the eye and I said, I do, it's a matter of justice. I am saying, I will give Angela what she is rightly due. And then she says, I will give Matt what he is rightly due. Also, we say we will give God what he is rightly due. And part of these duties, to give someone what they're rightly due, is called justice. So you see here we have the sense of justice. This is not just lovey-dovey feelings, emotions, sentiments. This is a matter of justice. I know what I said. I know what I meant. I know what I will do. It's a matter of justice. So the Holy Father here is saying that, yes, we have these duties of married life. This is a given, and we need to think about it. Sometimes we forget about, I need to do what I said I would do. And so we have a matter of justice that the man is going to say, I will, I do, I will. And the woman is going to say, I do, I will. And it's not just that it's the willing means I'm going to do it. It's a matter of my free will. I do this freely. I will. I think one of the older rites of marriage, actually, instead of saying I do, the couple said, I will. Will you da-da-da, will you da-da-da, I will. And will kind of means a perpetual thing. But again, the Holy Father is saying that within these duties, what needs to really pervade and sink deep into this matter of justice is that there is something greater than justice. Justice cannot be forgotten here because it's important. But what has to be that soil and pervade and kind of be over that justice? It's charity. It's that I am doing this duty out of love for my spouse, out of love for my children, out of love for God. And this is the type of love that Christ has for his church and the church has for Christ. And this is the type of love that this mutual assistance, this mutual support, this yoking together in fidelity is also supposed to imitate, which is the love of Christ and his church. Section 23. This outward expression of love in the home demands not only mutual help, but must go further. Must have at its primary purpose that man and wife help each other day by day in forming and perfecting themselves in the interior life, so that through their partnership in life, they may advance ever more and more in virtue, and above all, that they may grow in true love towards God and their neighbor. Again, charity. Not just justice. We cannot leave justice aside. Justice is important, but more important than justice, and what should really be the umbrella over justice, is charity. Now, we know from Scripture that there is no greater love, no greater charity than to lay down your life for another. And this is what Christ shows us in charity. So Jesus Christ actually shows us the perfect example of the virtue of charity. And he says that we should love each other as he loved us. Well, how did he love us? What's his perfect act of love? It's of course, the cross. So when we look at Calvary and we look at what a man and a woman are saying to each other when they say, I do or I will, they are saying that I do this, I make this commitment, I make this commitment freely and faithfully, fruitful and full. I give my all. On the cross, Jesus, in Latin, when he says it is finished, in Latin that is consummatum est. Consumma. Summa means totality. So Jesus on the cross is saying, I give myself with totality, holding nothing back. And that's really what we mean by full here, a consummatum est. That's actually what we say when a man and a woman give their word, then they consummate their word through the sexual act. they consummate the marriage. And so free, faithful, fruitful, and full. Jesus freely gave himself on the cross. Faithful to us, you and you alone. Fruitful, it bears the sacraments and grace. And full, he gives himself all, the consummatum est. Now, particularly in a wedding, in a marriage, a couple is going to be prepared, at least in Texas. When I prepare couples, I walk them through a prenuptial questionnaire. And in the prenuptial questionnaire, there are 6 questions that are asked regarding the nature and obligation of marriage. In other words, what marriage is, but what your duties, your obligations within the marriage are. And they really center around these 6 words. Do you understand? Is your I do going to be free? Is it pressured by anyone or any situation? Is this freely given? Are you going to be faithful to your spouse? Is your I do given without conditions, an unconditional permanent commitment to your spouse? Are you open to giving your spouse the right to children? Of course, not everyone is able to have children, but are you open to giving your spouse the right to children? Are you, of course, going to enter into the sexual act with your spouse? And is this going to be a sacrificial giving of self for the entirety of your life? So these 6, free, faithful, unconditional, children, sexual act, and sacrifice, you can see how they tie in. Free, of course, goes with free. Faithful and unconditional go with faithful. Children and the sexual act primarily go with fruitful. And sexual act and sacrifice go with that nature of full, the consummatum est, giving yourself totality in a sacrificial way, both body and soul. This is what all of this really then means to when the Holy Father says the mutual help must go further. So let's first talk about mutual help, and then we'll talk about what does he mean by going further. So the mutual help goes down to that mutual assistance. When a man and a woman are going to be yoked together for their duties, which is the home, intimacy, and providing and protecting, you can always remember that by HIP, H-I-P, HIP, home, intimacy, providing, and protecting. If you want to spell HIP with 2 P's, that's fine, provide and protect. So home, intimacy, provide, and protect, those are the duties of a family. And you can see how the free, faithful, unconditional children, sexual act, and sacrifice tie into those duties. That's the mutual help. That's the mutual assistance that that a man and a woman are saying that they will give to each other. The Holy Father says this needs to go further to where the husband and wife are helping each other each day to grow in the interior life. So that's obviously exterior, your home, your children, your job, all those things there's an interior element to those, but those are very exterior things. I see where you live. I have met your children. I have gone to your place of work or done business with you. Those are all exterior things. But the interior, it must go further than just that. It has to go to the interior life, which is really the spiritual life of the man and the woman, that they are going to help each other grow in that interior life, to develop that interior life, to perfect that interior life, and grow in virtue each day. Virtue, we know, is an action that's done repeatedly, so it's a habit. You do a certain thing day after day after day after day, and then when it becomes hard to do that thing, extremely hard, or you're tempted not to do that thing, then you have built the habit and you easily do it. And marriage is very much a day-to-day thing. In fact, I'm changing a diaper. Okay, I'm changing a diaper. And then it just becomes habitual to change a diaper. I'm waking up with a child at night. And whatever it is, I'm waking up early to make my spouse coffee and then taking the coffee up to her and giving her a little kiss. Things like that become those day in and day out duties that are not just done in justice, but are done in charity. And also a virtue has been developed to where this is not just something you're doing, but joyfully doing. And when it gets hard, you do it anyways. And that's the beauty of marriage. And it's that day in and day out virtue, justice, and charity that actually helps 2 people that are in a sacramental marriage increase grace. We'll talk about that in the 4th video, but the sacramental nature, because this is a sacrament, every time a man does what he is supposed to do, he increases in grace. Every time a woman does what she's supposed to do, she increases in grace. This is a great sacrament in which daily the people not only grow in virtue, but also grow in grace. Section 24. This mutual molding of husband and wife, this determined effort to perfect each other, can in a very real sense, as the Roman Catechism teaches, be said to be the chief reason and purpose of matrimony, provided matrimony be looked at not in the restricted sense as instituted for the proper conception and education of the child, but more widely as the blending of life as a whole and the mutual interchange and sharing thereof. So, of course, we already talked about the primary purpose of marriage is procreation and education of children. But also we understand that a couple is only fertile for a certain amount of time. They may be married 2 or 3 times longer than that time of fertility. So there is another reason, overarching reason, of what these two people will do together for the entirety of their life. And that will be, I love this word, mutual molding, that they are going to mold each other. We know, of course, that God is the potter and we are the clay, but part of how he will mold people is through this great sacrament of marriage. And so if a couple is married for 50 or 60 years, again, of those 60 years, they may only have fertility for 20 of the 60. The entire 60 years is going to be a mutual molding, a determined effort to perfect each other. We kind of I have to ask myself that is my intention to mold my wife and to have a determined effort to make her more perfect, to allow God to work through her to mold me and make me perfect, and vice versa. And this ultimately is actually one of the reasons why I married my wife, because one of the central things that I recognized about her immediately was that she made me better. And I could actually say to her, you make me better. In a sense, here's my life, but it has bumped up and been made better. Things that perhaps sins have gone away and are being battled, and virtues that I had are now being increased. So in other words, you make me better. There's a mutual molding, a concerted effort, a determined effort to perfect the other. As Jesus said, as he commands, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. So this perfection, once people are in a bond, and if you see the graphic here, you have that permanent union. You and only you, one man and one woman. I want to be mutually molded in perfection with you. You make me better. And if you're discerning marriage, you primarily want to pick someone that will make you better. You make them better, they make you better. And the better we're talking about here is not just a good person, but also a holy person. Because it's not about just being good, it's about being good and also being holy. That we are perfected in the way that Christ wants us to be perfected. So if you see here, this molding, mutual molding and perfection radiates actually from the bond in 2 ways. We are going to conform more to the likeness of Christ and his church, because this is a sacrament. So that's going to radiate towards being in the image of Christ and his church. It's also going to radiate to the jobs of marriage, the purposes of marriage, which is being a good father, being a good mother, and then also the mutual support, being a good husband, being a good wife, being a good companion, a lifelong companion. And that's actually the perfection happens in those areas, those 3 areas. Section 25. By this same love, it is necessary that all the other rights and duties of the marriage state be regulated as the words of the apostle. Let the husband render the debt to his wife, and the wife also in like manner to the husband. 1 Corinthians 7:3. We talked about this verse in the second video a lot. Definitely read that verse, 1 Corinthians 7. Express not only a law of justice, but of charity. So again, the Pope is just reiterating what he has said earlier, that justice is central, but justice should always strive to be done in charity. So I do what I am supposed to do, but I do that with charity, out of charity and with joy. So then what is another person do? And he says here, the rights and duties of marriage. How should we see this? So he points us to St. Paul. Let the husband render the debt to his wife. So a husband owes his wife something, and the wife owes her husband something. In this case, it's called a debt. I owe my wife a debt. Now, typically when we think of debt in our society, we immediately think of a negative. We think of money. I owe a debt on my credit card. I owe debt on my house or my car or whatever. And so with this, we have to see another debt. And what is another debt that we think of as Christians? We think of the debt that Jesus paid for us. Jesus Christ paid my debt, right? He redeemed me. He made grace and salvation available to all. And so that is the debt he paid. I owe him a debt because he paid that, because he died for me. I now will live and also be willing to die for him. I owe Christ a debt. So you could say very well that the church, the bride of Christ, owes her spouse Jesus a debt, and that Jesus owed a debt for his spouse. And so in that sense, we think of that debt in a charity. I want to spend my whole life giving my wife what she is rightly due, the debt that I owe her. And we can see here, what is another person due? Well, in the vows, it's very specific. I will do this. I'm going to pay this debt freely. In other words, I choose to pay this debt. I choose to give the other what they're rightly due. I will do this faithfully, day after day after day. I will do this with you and only you. Now here, especially, we'll just keep going through it. Fruitful. I want my family, my home, our life, our marriage to bear fruit, and I want to give my all. It's not 50-50 here. I don't give 50. My wife doesn't give 50. I give 100% and she gives 100%. It's full, total gift of self. Now you can definitely take this down to the sexual act, and in this graph you see that there's the intimacy that a man and a woman have, and this intimacy, particularly the sexual act, is something that should be given freely. It should be given faithfully to that person and only that person. In other words, my body, I only give my body to my wife. She only gives her body to me. That's the marital debt that we give to each other in the sexual act and that intimacy. Fruitful, that act needs to be open to life and not frustrate the procreative act. And then full. Again, with the body in the sexual act, part of that fullness is not withholding fertility from each other. So you can see here that the debt, when we think of giving the debt, it needs to be given freely, faithfully to that person, needs to be a debt that bears fruit, just like our Lord's debt bore fruit on the cross, and it needs to be a debt that is full. I'm giving it all. This is what's done for spouses. Now here, it's very obvious how this happens in intimacy with the sexual act, that a man and a woman must do this together. It needs two people to do, obviously, the sexual act. But here we have the other part of HIP, H-I-P, and if you want to do H-I-P-P, you can. Home, intimacy, provide, and protect. Who is it going to be the man or the woman that is primarily going to render that debt or give that debt in regard to home? So in other words, who is going to take care of the home? Who's going to take that primary debt of taking care of that home? And then who is going to take care of the providing and protecting and kind of handle that area? This is a major question that should be discussed and talked about, and always in conversation about who takes care of these things, because these are the things that really do need to take care of, and if they don't, there's going to be disorder in the family. The Roman Catechism, section 8, on the sacrament of marriage says the following: this sacrament is called matrimony because the principal object which a female should propose to herself in marriage is to become a mother, or because to a mother it belongs to conceive, bring forth, and train up her offspring. This is important because here the actual sacrament is named after the woman. In the Catholic Church, we have holy orders, which is a patrimony. Pater means father, patrimony, moni means the duty of. So patrimony, holy orders, is for men only, the duty of a man in regards to the church, priesthood, bishop, deacon. This is another great sacrament in the church called matrimony, the duty of the mother. Why is it called this? Because a woman is considering, do I want to be a mother or not? Am I called to be a mother or not? Or, more simply put, it's only a woman. It is only a woman that can conceive, bring forth, and train up her offspring. It is natural that the woman, the mother, should take care of the home. The best explanation I've ever heard of this was when I was working with a couple. I asked the couple, who do you think should take care of the home, and who do you think should provide and protect if you could only pick one of you to do each of those tasks, those duties? And the woman said, I think I should take care of the home. And I asked her why, and she said, because I have a womb. And I at first didn't quite know what she meant, so I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, a womb is a home. And she went on to say that God has given the woman a home inside her. And this is beautiful. God has made a woman with a home inside her. If God has given the woman a home, then it's logical that he thinks the woman can take care of that home, and that she, as part of what's built into her, is to nurture and to care for a home. Therefore, she has a womb. So the children will be in her home first, her womb. They will be there for 9 months, and then they will be born, like it says, conceive, bring forth, train up. And then where will those kids go? They will go into the second womb, or the second home, which is the house, the home. And so it is right and fitting that a mother, a woman, has the natural gifts and is even built such to take care of the home. And so this would be the primary duty of the woman, is to be a homemaker, to take care of the home. What is the job of the man? The job of the man is to just surround his wife and his children and say, I value this, and I will provide and protect this. I will do whatever I need to do to take care and to have a buffer, providing and protecting this. And so here we see that the intimacy is done by both man and woman. Primary duty of the woman, taking care of the home. Primary duty of the man, providing and protecting. Even though they will share in these roles and help each other out, mutually assist each other, which is what we're talking about, this mutual assistance, this mutual help, but they have a primary role to take in those areas. In regard to these duties, there are some things that a man cannot do. Namely, a man cannot conceive a child and cannot bear a child or bring forth a child. So you can see here I have put the woman up at the home because that is what she and only she can do. However, what happens if a man fails in his duty to provide and protect? Can a woman, does she have the ability, the power to take over that duty and provide and protect if a man doesn't? Yes, she actually can do that. She has the ability to work and to make money and to provide and protect when needed. When should that happen, however? The Archbishop here says that that should happen if the man fails in his duties. So a mother's sphere becomes extended when a father fails in his duty, compromises his authority, and even provokes resistance by his disorderly conduct. So when a man fails, a father here particularly, when a father fails or somehow has disorderly conduct and doesn't do his job, his duty to provide and protect, that is going to unfortunately fall to the woman, and the woman will have to do two jobs here. Sometimes we see this in families where the father does not take his responsibility serious. Sometimes, unfortunately, there could be a serious injury to the father and even a death to one of the spouses, and the other spouses have to do these duties, but it's very difficult. For instance, a single mom, not only taking care of the home, but also having to provide and protect, is not an ideal situation. A man that is having to maybe loses his spouse and is a single father, having to provide and protect and take care of all the needs of the home, that also is not an ideal situation. What is the ideal situation, of course, is having both father and mother in the picture, fulfilling the duties that they have to each other and to their children. Section 27. For if the man is the head, the woman is the heart. And as he occupies the chief place in ruling, so she may and ought to claim for herself the chief place in love. This is one of my favorite quotes from, maybe my most favorite quote from all of the 100+ sections in this encyclical. It just speaks to exactly what a man should do and what a woman should do, what their places are, and the value of how they work together. So if you see here, the woman's duty is primarily the home, to take care of the home. Why? Because she has the heart, and her chief place is love. And then the man, he is the head, and his chief place is the ruling and the leading. So here I said lead, but it actually could say ruling there as well. So why is this important? Well, what happens if you have a creature with two heads? If you have a creature with two heads, so imagine you have a creature with two heads, I think one of three things is going to happen. Either they're going to butt heads, right? They are going to go different directions, want to lead or rule in different directions and tear the body apart, or one will eat the other, or the other one will eat the other. So I think two heads in a beast do not work, because you have two people leading, two people ruling. We'll talk about this later, but in regards to submission and providing a mission, you have two people always constantly providing a mission. And no one knows no one is under the mission, because both are providing the mission. So that just doesn't work. So how should this work? Well, let's think about how the body works. You have this heart that is supplying the blood to the head. If you have a head without blood, it goes brain dead, and it cannot think, it cannot make decisions. So it's very important that if the head is going to work properly, if the head is going to rule, make decisions, and lead, it has to have that blood flow, right? Very, very important. But the heart is not going to go anywhere unless the head is kind of directing it. So you have to have head and heart working together, the love and the leading, the love and the ruling. Another thing that I want to kind of present here, which I think is beautiful, is what does a heart do? Just think for a second, what does a heart do? My heart is beating right now, or I wouldn't be able to talk to you, but I can't feel my heart right now. If I were to put my hand over my heart, maybe I could feel it, or if I were to work out, do some jumping jacks, then I could feel it. But right now, as I'm talking to you, I actually can't feel my heart. But what is my heart doing? It's steadily beating, but it's steadily beating in a way that goes unnoticed. That means a heart is kind of behind the scenes, humble, simple, quiet, and steady. And I think these are all, of course, the characteristics of a very good woman. A woman that is steady, a woman that is meek and humble, but always, always constantly there, working, working, working. Many times behind the scenes, many times unnoticed. So many people do so much for their home. Day in and day out, they're just beating, beating, beating. But because they're within the walls of their home, no one notices them. Even their own family doesn't notice them. It's similar to someone that's spending all day in the kitchen, doing all these beautiful things, and people enjoy the food, but maybe no one notices the hard work that's put on, behind the scenes. Now, on the other hand, when you think of a head, what do you think of a head? Well, just look at my head right now. It's visible. It's moving. I'm moving my head a lot as I talk, looking around, what's going on. And so a head is something that's typically more visible, more, you can notice the motion more visible, and more movement going on, and looking around. And that too is typical of a man, that many times is visible, is the most visible one in the family, because they're out maybe working or making decisions and wondering, okay, how can I provide? How can I protect? So I do think when the Holy Father gives this analogy, head and heart, I think it's beautiful, and it speaks to the dignity of man and woman, masculinity and femininity, but also not to forget the love and the leadership that also comes from man and woman. A great example from this, and it's not, I didn't really think about it too much, just kind of ran across it as I was reading scripture, is the example of Pontius Pilate and his wife. You wouldn't really think that this might be an example of how marriage would work, but you actually see these two roles in Matthew 27:19. So I do want to read that real quick as just kind of a short example from scripture of how this works. So Matthew 27:19, for he knew that they had delivered him up out of envy. Now, so Pilate knew that the Jews had delivered Jesus up for death out of envy. All right. So Pilate knew that they had delivered Jesus up out of envy. Now, as he was sitting on the judgment seat, this is Pilate, as Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, he's the head, he's ruling. As Pilate, the head, is sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, this is what the wife, the heart, right, the lover, said to her husband, have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things in a dream today because of him. So what does the woman do? She goes up to her husband, she expresses her concern, and she says, don't have anything to do with this man. She's that pushing that blood into his head so that he can make the correct decision. But he fails. He does not listen. He, out of fear of the people, out of fear of the government, and what Caesar will say, he backs down out of fear and makes the wrong decision. Here is a perfect example of how marriage actually does work. Pilate still needs to make the decision, but his wife, loving him, doesn't want him to make the wrong decision, so she brings her concern to him. He doesn't listen to the concern. What he should have done is carefully considered her concern, particularly the dream that she had, and then made the decision that he needed to make. In paragraph 29 or section 29, Pius XI is going to quote his predecessor Leo XIII. The man is the ruler of the family and head of the woman, but because she is flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone, let her be subject and obedient to the man, not as a servant, but as a companion, so that nothing be lacking of honor or of dignity in the obedience which she pays. Let divine charity be the constant guide of their mutual relations, both in him who rules and in her who obeys, since each bears the image, the one of Christ, the other of the church. So here in a sacramental marriage, which we'll talk about in the fourth video, we see that a man and a woman in Christian marriage, a sacramental marriage, is going to be modeling Christ and the church. And it's important then to understand that when the man rules and when the woman obeys, when there is the providing of the mission and the submission being under that mission, it always has to be done in light of Christ and the church. How did Christ rule over the church? With love. How does the church always obey Christ? With devotion and fidelity. Section 37. For experience has taught that unassailable stability in matrimony is a fruitful source of virtuous life and of the habits of integrity. Where this order of things obtains, the happiness and well-being of the nation is safely guarded. What the families and individuals are, so also is the state, for a body is determined by its parts. I really like this. We've talked about this, I believe, in the first video, that the society will go as the family goes, family will go as marriage goes. So I want to go now here, that same kind of thought, but regarding the duties. So where it says, for a body is determined by its parts. So let's break this down even further now. What are the parts of a marriage? The parts of a marriage are the duties, the nature, and the obligations. So here we're going to focus on the obligations of the man to the woman to the man. What are the obligations of man and woman within marriage? Because the obligations make the marriage makes the family makes the state. So we're taking this down almost to the smallest parts we can to determine the whole. So what are those parts? Here, let's talk about 5 crucial parts that make a marriage. Number 1, it's the bond. The two people must be bonded by God. This bond needs to be one man, one woman. It needs to be that person and only that person, a man and a woman, permanent, exclusive, until death, and bonded by the proper authority. So that's first and foremost. That part has to be right. Once that part is there, and you can see the hand here with the thumb is the bond. You got to get the thumb right. Then you move on to the 3 bended fingers. And there's one of those bended fingers, the middle finger, that is, or the middle finger that's bent, is going to be intimacy. A duty of a man and a woman is to give their bodies to each other, to give their bodies to each other in a generous way that is open to life and doesn't frustrate the sexual act at all. This is the marital debt. This is giving to that person and only that person. That is number 2. Number 3 is something that they have a particular duty to do, each of them, male and female, but also that they support each other in. And that would be that the woman takes care of the home and the man takes care of the providing and protecting. Now, this does not mean that you can't have the man do something in the home or the woman do something to make money or protect. It doesn't mean that. It just means that the primary role of making sure that gets done. In other words, let me say it this way. The woman needs to make sure the home is taken care of. The man needs to make sure that they are provided and protected for. How they cross over and help each other is really up to the individuals, up to their talents, up to their desires, their energies, their skills, all of that involved. But there is a primary role to play here because of really the role they have as man and woman. So that's 3. 4 is also a mutual thing here where they are going to imitate Christ and the church. They are a mirror of, or pointing to, a sign, like a sacrament of. The man will be like Christ, the woman will be like the church. We'll probably get into this in the 4th video, but you just read Ephesians 5. Paul talks about this perfect, that a man needs to, and in what way should he love and provide and protect for his wife? He needs to do so the way Christ would do for his church, lay down his life for his spouse. The man just presents the mission. And the woman then is under that mission. That's where we get the word submissive, under the mission. I remember when I was dating my wife, she told me, I have no problem being submissive to you. I have no problem being under your mission. And then she followed that up with asking me, what's your mission? And as a man, that really made me think. I really appreciate her saying that because it made me think as a young man, what is my mission? What is my purpose? What is my mission? Where am I going to take this woman and our future children? What am I doing? What is my mission? So a man has to know the mission and be strong in that mission as Christ is strong in his mission. And a woman then is under that mission. Simply, what was the mission of Christ? Well, we see it was very clear what his mission was to teach, to sanctify, make souls holy, and to govern. What does his church do? They continue that mission because they're under that mission. The church doesn't decide the mission. The church is under and supports that mission. The 5th one is also a joint one where you have, of course, the hand. So if you see the hand here and you see it in the diagram, I guess it's actually like that. But you have the bond. You have the 3 things that we talked about. And then you have the point, the gun up, the point, and that is heaven. The man and the woman need to be concerned and make it a priority to get each other to heaven, to make each other holy, and to make sure they get their children to heaven. One of another thing that just really stands out to me in marriage is that my job is to make my wife holy. I do not, and I have not, and I will not always make my wife happy. We look at those 3 things: home, intimacy, providing, and protecting. We are not always happy in those areas. I may not be happy with my home or what's going on in my home or the food in the fridge. I may not be happy with the sexual act or the intimacy or how it's going at that time. I may not be happy with my job or feel like I'm not making enough money or I'm not protecting my family. I may not be happy in those areas, but I need to always make sure striving for holiness. We want to go for holiness and happiness, but never compromise holiness. We're now going to move into the section of the attacks, and there's going to be primarily 2 attacks that the Holy Father will mention against marriage, and particularly against the duties of marriage, the justice, the charity. One is false feminism. The other one is going to be a sentimentality. First, let's talk about false feminism. In these sections that I'm about to read, this is not what the Holy Father is saying. This is what he is saying the world is saying. So remember, our enemies are the devil, the flesh, and the world. Here are the false teachings of the world. So the world, and remember this was written in 1930. So you can go back about 100 years. There were voices in the world that were saying the following: the wife needs to be freed from the cares of children and family, should, to the neglect of these, be able to follow her own bent and devote herself to business and even public affair. So I've underlined a few things that here I think would be focused on the man and focused on the woman. We've already talked about how the woman typically cares for the children and the family, and it would be the man that would typically traditionally take care of the business and public affairs. This still definitely, we see that, and we see that that works. It's going to be a man that goes out and takes care of the day-to-day business of what needs to be happening, runs a business, a family business, or works for someone, something like that. And then any of the public affairs that need to take place, again, providing and protecting for the family. That protection may just be like, hey, we need a new roof on the house, or hey, the car's not working and it needs to go into the shop. And so a lot of those just simply public affairs, the day in and day out job of providing and protecting, of course, typically goes to the man, to do that business and public affair, because it associates with providing and protecting, and the children and family, the cares of the children and family fit with the home. So this is typically what happens. Here, it's saying that a woman, a wife, needs to be free from the cares of children and family so that she can devote herself to business and public affair. What happens, though, when a woman does that? Section 74. The woman, even without the knowledge and against the wish of her husband, may be at liberty to conduct and administer her own affairs, giving her attention chiefly to these rather than to the children, husband, and family. Again, this is not the Holy Father saying this. This is what he says the world and the falsehoods of the world are saying. They're presenting a woman that can go ahead and have the liberty to basically stop giving her attention to her children, her husband, and her family. So what happens, highlighted here, you see that a woman who is the heart and the lover, who is taking care of the home, her primary really focus and care is chiefly on her husband, the man, and then the children and the family. She is the homemaker, and actually we use that word when you say that a woman is the homemaker. We don't call men homemakers. Sometimes we may say they're a stay-at-home dad, but we don't call them homemakers because we know truly that it's a woman that makes the home, a woman's touch. You know, in our society, we have bachelor pads, and we kind of have an idea of what a bachelor pad is, where a bunch of men, 2 or 3 men live together. Typically think of a disorderly place. When you have 2 or 3 women living together, it's typically a nice place, and a woman keeps a nice home. She's a homemaker. Now, when you look at what is the man's role, the man typically has a career, and I want to stress the etymology of this word career. Career actually means a wagon, kind of like it's just a wheeled cart is what it literally means. It's something that is going behind the carriage. And so if you have a horse and carriage, and then you have a wheeled cart behind that carriage, you obviously know what's important. The family goes in the carriage. Everything you need to provide and protect for the family goes in the wheeled cart that is behind. And it's important that that's behind. So the carriage is always behind the family, supporting the woman, the children, and the family. So if you look here, what is the purpose of a man providing and protecting? What is the purpose of his business and public affairs? It is always secondary. The man has a job and provides and protects for the good of his wife, his children, and his family. Now, this can be a big problem in our society when the man puts his career first, because what you're doing in that case literally is putting the wheeled cart in front of the horses and the carriage. The horses and the carriage are definitely that woman, that children, and that family, and they are always primary. And the cart behind is always to protect and provide for the woman, the family, and the children. This is extremely important. What the Holy Father is saying here is when a woman neglects the most important thing to go to the secondary, there's going to be a consequence of that. There's going to be disorder to that. part of the disorder that comes from that shift is what we call the battle of the sexes. And so now we have, if you go all the way back to the beginning in Genesis, we see that God created man and woman. Well, Satan hates that. God didn't create a third sex or a fourth sex or a fifth sex. He just created man and woman. Man and woman are complete in each other and also bear the image of God in that complementarity. So Satan wants there to be a battle between the sexes. He wants to be a disorder. He wants to just mess it all up. And so let's look at a few ways. I do want to identify a few ways that this has happened and Satan has come in and just spread his lies and done his destruction in our society through the battle of the sexes. In the 50s, and it's easy to see this, if you look at TV shows, especially in the 50s, I'm thinking of I Love Lucy, for example, which is a nice show. It's a good show. It's good. It's clean. It's funny. But constantly what you see in something like I Love Lucy is that Lucy is belittled. She is treated like a child. And a lot of the shows in those decades, 50s and 60s, the woman was the idiot, the woman was the child, and the man was constantly superior, treating the woman as a child. And so the woman was degraded. This is not as it should be. I don't remember who said this, but I heard this somewhere. I think it was one of the popes. The pope said that when Eve was created from Adam, Eve was created from the side of Adam. She wasn't created from his head as to be above him. She wasn't created from the foot as to be below him or trampled upon, but created from the side to be a companion and to walk together, as we said earlier, head and heart. So here what we have is the woman definitely being degraded, almost put under and stepped upon, and the man here kind of in a sense winning the battle of the sexes. This drastically has shifted, and in the 90s, maybe even earlier, but definitely in the 90s, we see that this has, the power shift has turned, and man is now degraded, especially in shows. What do you see? I'm kind of thinking of shows like Roseanne and other things in the 90s that were taking place, definitely like The Simpsons, and other shows where you have the man is just simply just degraded beyond belief, belittled to where the man is stupid, he's a fool, he's a dumb child. And who always is superior and coming to the rescue? It's the wife, it's the woman. And so in this case, the roles have been reversed and the battle of the sexes has shifted and the power has shifted to the side of the woman, who is treating the man like a child. So in the 50s, the man treated the woman like a child, and now in the 90s, the woman treated the man like a child. Neither is good. Should a man treat his wife like a child? No. Should a wife treat her husband as a child? No. The best thing I can do for my family is be a husband to my wife and be a father to my children. I do not need to be a father to my wife. What's the best thing my wife can do? The best thing my wife can be is to be a great and beautiful, wonderful, devoted wife to me and mother to the children. The last thing I want is my wife mothering me. I don't need two mothers. I guess three mothers. I have my mother and I have my mother in heaven, Mary. I don't need a third mother. So we have to remember spouses cannot treat their spouse like a child. And this is one of the ways that Satan creeps in to destroy and attack marriage. Another element to this battle of sexes is when a woman says, anything a man can do, a woman can do better. In other words, I'll just go ahead and do it because this idiot little fool, this kid, isn't doing it, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'll do my job and his job. And this is a big problem where there's an overstepping of the roles and the duties. We are called to do our duty, the duty that we're supposed to do, and assist, but not overstep our bounds and not take over the duties of our spouse. In this regard, a man can also be guilty because a man could say, well, I can't do what a woman does, so I guess I'll just let her do everything. She's kind of good at what she does, but then she seems to be good at what I do too, so the man then lets the woman do everything. And that is a danger in a sense of a man not stepping up to being a man and doing what he needs to do. Yes, there are things that women do that only women can do. And maybe perhaps a woman can do some of the things a man can do. It doesn't mean that she ought to do those things. And it definitely doesn't mean that the man should let her do those things. Again, going back to the beauty of what God has designed marriage, that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. They have particular duties because they're good at those duties. In other words, God gave them the gifts and skills and temperament to do those things. And so they can do those things with great charity and joy and justice, as we talked about before. I think the extreme of all of this tends to when a woman just simply says, I don't need a man. I don't need a man. And so you have, I'll just be single. I'll just raise the kids alone. I don't need a man. You also see this with homosexuality, where you have two women that will just live together, attempt to raise children together, and say, we don't want a man. We don't like men. We don't need a man. This can go another way, where it can go the opposite way, where a man says, I don't need a woman. They're no good. I don't need them. They're just blah, 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 whatever. And so, and this also goes into the homosexuality, where you'll have two men that will just then live together, attempt to raise children, and again, say, I don't need any women in my life. I don't want to mess with them or whatever. So you can see how Satan gets us to this point where not only are the sexes at battle with each other, but then at the end, they're even saying that the sex is not necessary, that woman is not necessary, man is not necessary. And that is an ultimate attack on God, because God in the beginning did say, yes, man and I made woman, and I don't make something that's not necessary. So we just need to be watching out for these within our society, within our marriage, and protect against these battles of the sexes, and even coming to the point where we say we don't need the other sex. Section 75. What happens if we listen to these lies of the world? What happens if a woman doesn't do what a woman is supposed to do, and a man doesn't do what a man is supposed to do? What happens if these lies creep into marriages and affect the family? They will also not just affect the family, but they'll affect society. A woman is in a super high place within the home, a level of dignity as a woman, has roles that only she can do. And the whole sacrament is named after her. The Holy Father here says, if the woman descends from her truly regal throne, she's the queen. She is the queen. If she descends from her truly regal throne, to which she has been raised within the walls of the home by means of the gospel, here are the effects. The husband suffers the loss of a wife. The children suffer the loss of their mother. The home and the whole family suffer the loss of an ever watchful guardian. The woman is irreplaceable. She cannot be replaced. She is the queen. She is enthroned high in the home. If she descends from that throne to go out and to seek other things, business, public affairs, whatever it is, a consequence will take place. It'll take place, of course, to the husband who loses his wife, the children who lose their mother, the home, which loses their guardian, but it also has an effect on society at large. So it doesn't just affect the marriage. It doesn't just affect the family. It affects society. So here is an example in which the particular duties, when they are not done, they affect everything. It's a chain effect. And the duties here particularly are the care of the home, the care of the family, as far as the procreation education, and the care of the spouse. So particularly to the woman, when a woman does not care for her home, when a woman does not have children or raise children, and when a woman does not take her role as that bride, as that mutual help and assistance to her husband. I move into the second attack against marriage, which the Pope identifies, which is sentimentalism and personal happiness. So this has to do with feelings, and really centered on, well, I don't feel anything anymore, or I'm not happy anymore. You hear this with couples. So we'll go into that, and notice that this whole section, this whole video is on the duties, justice, and charity. Justice, which is an act of the will, charity, which is an act of a will, is superior to our passions, which is where happiness and feelings fall under. So we have to kind of remember that as we go into this next section. Section 78. These enemies of marriage go further, however, when they substitute for that true and solid love, which is the basis of conjugal happiness, a certain vague compatibility of temperament. This they call sympathy, and assert that since it is the only bond by which husband and wife are linked together, when it ceases, the marriage is completely dissolved. There are so many things here. One, let's talk about a marriage cannot be completely dissolved. This is an indissoluble bond, but there is definitely the lie in our society regarding marriage that marriage is simply just a contract between two people, and when the two people no longer want that contract, it can be dissolved. We're moving from what we know marriage is as a true and solid love to a compatibility of temperament. Compatibility, we're not compatible anymore. We don't have the same feelings. We're not happy. We have drifted our separate ways. And so you hear all of these things, and all of these things are then the justification of dissolving the bond, and then moving on to perhaps someone you're more compatible with, or you match temperaments with, or you are happy with, or you do feel good with. But here there's a few questions, and it really does center on the duties, justice and charity. Is marriage about faith or feelings? Is feelings really what's going to run my marriage? I don't have feelings as much as I had before. My feelings are stronger or less. My feelings come and go. My faith doesn't. This is, in other words, what I said earlier. I know what I said. I know what I meant. I know what this sacrament is. I know what this sacrament is to me, but I also know what this sacrament is to every couple on planet Earth. So in other words, the sacrament, the institution, is bigger than me and my feelings. And that's a matter of faith. These are solid things: faith, justice, charity, doing the duties you said you would do, doing them out of charity even when you don't want to. The next thing is holy or happy. You say, well, I'm not happy. She doesn't make me happy. He doesn't make me happy. I said it earlier, my wife does not always make me happy, and I do not always make her happy. But I will tell you the truth. My wife, Angela, has always made me holy. She has never compromised my holiness. So I'm okay if she doesn't always make me happy. I would not be okay if she compromised my holiness. And this is very, very important, especially in preparing for marriage, to find someone that is faithful, because faithfulness is a rock. Feelings are not. Find someone that is holy and will make you holy, because holiness is a solid rock. Happiness comes and goes, right? It's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's a passion. And then, are we focused on charity and justice, or are we focused on just being in love? And what does that even mean? Because I would rather be acting in charity than be in love. Because in love, again, has to do with the excitement and the passions and the romance. So as we talk about what marriage is and the attack against it, we have to know that marriage is regarding faith, holiness, justice, and charity. All rocks that do not dissolve. What the world will say is, no, that's not what it's about. What it's really about is your feelings, your own happiness, and being in love and romance. Those all come and go and can be dissolved. So within a marriage, and if you're preparing for marriage, decide what side that you want to build your house. Remember what Jesus says, are you going to build your house on solid rock, or are you going to build your house on sand? The second, feelings, happy, and love, is the sand. The first, faith, holiness, charity, and justice, is the rock. Section 79, these are the words that would be put forth by the enemies of marriage, the lies of the world. They put forward in the first place that matrimony belongs entirely to the profane and purely civil sphere, that it is not to be committed to the religious society, the Church of Christ, but to the civil society alone. They then add that the marriage contract is to be freed from any indissoluble bond, and that separation and divorce are not only to be tolerated, but sanctioned by the law, from which it follows, finally, that robbed of all its holiness, matrimony should be enumerated amongst the secular and civil institutions. What happens if you actually follow this advice? If you follow this advice, and it's going to be robbed of all holiness, then you might as well just take away the aspect that's the sacrament, and that you're striving for heaven, and that you're imitating Christ in the church. So 4 things immediately just gone there. If you're going to allow people to get out of the bond, then you, of course, attack the permanent union of the bond, which is what marriage is. And you allow people to abandon each other through separation and divorce. So therefore, there's no longer mutual assistance. The only thing you have left, if this advice is to be followed, is really just that this is just simply an institution of man and woman to have children together. And that's pretty much it. All that's left is the procreation and education. But even that is attacked when you don't have it in a permanent union and you're not willing to mutually assist each other until death. Now in this 3rd section, the Holy Father is again going to provide a remedy for us, not leave us hanging, but instead talk a little bit about the preparation and how should people prepare for marriage. But also, if people have a troubled marriage, an unhappy marriage, what can they do to really enrich their marriage and heal their marriage, remedy their marriage? So in section 112, there is a danger that those who before marriage sought in all things what is theirs, who indulged even their impure desires, will be in the married state what they were before, that they will reap that which they have sown. Indeed, within the home there will be sadness, lamentation, mutual contempt, strifes, estrangements, weariness of common life, and worst of all, such parties will find themselves left alone with their own unconquered passions. This is very important for those preparing for marriage. You look at these duties, and you should take the duties seriously. For example, if you're a woman, are you ready to be under someone's mission? Are you looking for a man that actually has a mission? And as you're dating and getting to know them, are they a type of man that can provide a mission? Are you willing to bring forth children and be submissive to that man, as it says in Genesis 3:16? Are you willing to be the heart and the lover and take care of the home? For a man, are you willing to provide a mission? Are you willing to labor and toil amongst thorns and thistles, as it says in Genesis 3:17? Are you willing to take on the duty of providing and protecting, being the head and leading and ruling? And so not only does a man and woman need to ask, are they willing to do those duties, commit to those duties for life? In other words, are you willing to enter into this for 50, 60, 70 years? Because marriage is not for everyone. If you read Matthew 19, at the end of that section, Jesus says this is not for everyone. So you have to be willing to commit to those things. Are a man and a woman willing to live an intimate life, the sexual act, and the sexual act open to life, not frustrating that act? And are they willing to get each other to heaven? This is all part of that preparation. And then eliminating things within our life that are going to be hindrances to these things. In other words, if I have some type of unconquered passion with lust, pornography, masturbation, work on those things now. Go to confession. Ask for the grace necessary to blot those things out now so that you do not bring those into your marriage and that intimate life of your marriage. If, as a man, you have a hard time making decisions now, then pray for the character to make good, firm decisions and discern and make a decision and move on and be able to provide a mission. So everyone here, whether you're a man or a woman, has things to think about and say, I need to get myself ready for this great task. I need to ask for the grace and virtue to accept this great task and accept it for life. Section 115. To the proximate preparation of a good married life belongs very especially to the care in choosing a partner. On that depends a great deal whether the forthcoming marriage will be happy or not, since one may be to the other either a great help in leading a Christian life or a great danger and hindrance. This is beautiful advice. Your spouse will either be a great help or a great hindrance. Your spouse will either, I want to show here, number 5, will either help you get to heaven or hinder you from heaven. So in choosing a spouse, choose a spouse that will help you to heaven, not hinder you. Let's go into number 4. Let's work backwards here. Choose a spouse that can imitate Christ, if it's a man, and the church, if it's a woman. In other words, someone that will be willing to love like Christ and the church, provide a mission, be submissive, and imitate that sacramental nature of Christ and the church. Let's move on to 3. If you're a man, choose a woman that will be able to take care of a home, that will be a great heart and a great lover. And again, a woman, choose a man that can be a provider and a protector, that can lead and can be a good head of the family. Number 2, pick a person that will be intimate with you, that of course there's the attraction there, that's that intimacy, that respect, that there's no lust involved and things like that, but that this is truly someone that will be with you intimately, lovingly, not, as we said earlier, not as an adulterer, not as a prostitute, but as a husband and a wife, and be open to life, not frustrate the act. And then number 1, someone that will be willing to marry in the church under the proper authority, and that enters into marriage in a permanent, exclusive, indissoluble union until death. These are all the different characteristics, at least 5 things that you definitely want to seriously consider. It's kind of like a necessary, non-negotiable list of the person that I'm going to commit the next 50, 60 years to. I want them to hit these markers, and so that they can help me to heaven and not be a hindrance to me getting to heaven. Thank you for joining me for this 3rd lesson on Christian marriage, Casti, Connubii, on mutual assistance, conjugal fidelity. Please take the time to watch the other 2 videos. The first one is on bond and authority. The second video is on offspring, procreation, education. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.